Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's also a member of the Intelligence Committee. Congressman, I want to ask you about something we've been talking about for 2 hours. Do you have any information on why the Capitol Police haven't briefed the public about the events of last Wednesday?
Well, part of the problem, Nicole, is, of course, the chief of police and both sergeants at arms, who are the people who are charged with our security, all three of them have resigned. Appropriately so, I'm afraid, because it was just such a massive security failure. But yeah, you would have thought in normal times, of course, somebody, the Secret Service, the FBI, somebody, the Department of Homeland Security would have been in front of the Congress and saying, look, we have an investigation yet to do, but we understand that many of you are glad to be alive today. So we want to share with you everything that we know. Instead, we're reading about interviews that the recently resigned chief of police of the Capitol Police Force is giving to the press. And you ask a really good question. It is yet another indication of how dysfunctional the executive branch is in this moment, which is terrifying when you think about the fact that we're all going back to Washington this week, and we will all be back for the inauguration on the 20th. You'd like to have better faith than we do right now.
And I guess I asked that question with the same theory here, that there's so much on the line in the next 10 days in terms of how we're seen all around the world. And if the public hasn't heard from the police force that are supposed to protect you, if no one knows clearly who's functioning right now at 5:25 p.m. on Monday as America's commander-in-chief, there's reporting that it was Vice President Pence who activated the National Guard. There's reporting in multiple news outlets that White House aides do not plan to carry out any of Donald Trump's orders if they don't want to or don't think they're sound. I mean, do you have any clarity of, one, who's in charge of your safety and protection at the Capitol, and two, who's in charge of the country's safety as our commander-in-chief?
I heard you say this is a conversation you never anticipated having. I'm having that same sensation right now. Look, the prospect you raise is a horrifying prospect, right? The only thing more horrifying than the notion that Donald Trump remains in charge of the nuclear codes, that Donald Trump could order a military attack, that Donald Trump could tomorrow morning pardon all of the, what's the number now, 100 or so people that have been arrested for trying to kill members of Congress. The only thing scarier than that is the notion that maybe somebody else, other than the president of the United States, decides that they're going to take on presidential powers. I mean, this is a really ugly moment, which of course is why, though it is not likely to happen, this is why the president should not be president. I'm thinking back on Susan Collins, who after the first impeachment said, well, I think this president has learned his lesson. And what we know is that whatever it is that you imagine that he might do, he will find ways to shock you by doing even crazier things. And again, this is a man with his finger on the nuclear trigger. And that's why our hope right now is that Michael Pence, whose life was put in grave danger, who was asked to break the law, might just say, hey, I'm not comfortable with 9 days of the kind of leadership gap, the kind of vacuum that you're talking about.
I want to ask you about impeachment. Why do you think Republicans who think of themselves as caring about the country's national security, some even have the audacity to think they do that better than Democrats, and I'm not sure how any of them would make that case ever again after Wednesday. Why wouldn't they be for impeachment too?
Well, there's an answer to that question, but let's also be clear here. There were some Republicans who really stood up. Not many, but not all of them participated. I mean, think of this, Nicole. After we've almost all, been killed by a mob, we went back in session, and I got to listen to Mo Brooks of Alabama spew 5 minutes of utter conspiracy nonsense about undocumented aliens voting in this election. So it is important to remember that it is a subset of these guys who are true believer, hardcore cult-like figures. But to answer your question, if you want to know what they're afraid of, look at what happened to Lindsey Graham when Lindsey Graham tried to walk through Reagan National Airport, and he was beset by a mob. I mean, there's no other word for it, by a brutal, disgusting, obscene mob. And here's Lindsey Graham, who traded his soul to Donald Trump 4 years ago, and none of that mattered, because when he found the tiniest dust spectacle of decency, that was enough to turn the mob on him. And that is what my Republican colleagues are terrified of.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.